We know where he is. We know where he is. We know where he is. If you're looking for Rupert Murdoch, we know where he is. He's hiding behind the old barbed wire. And you know, we saw him, hiding behind the old barbed wire.
A freezing Saturday night and a group calling themselves Women Against Murdoch holds a candlelit march on his factory in Wapping. Some were sacked by Murdoch, some are married to striking printers, some are political sympathisers, all united in what's become the most personalised dispute in recent history, a fact that doesn't trouble Mr. Murdoch.
This is very much a little London thing. It was like the bad apple in the whole of British trade unionism. They have not received support from the TUC, and now they've not received support from their own brothers in their own union. It's a very localised thing, and it's become very emotional, and it is natural that when things become emotional, they get personalised.
What should we do with Rupert Murdoch? What should we do with Rupert Murdoch? Early in the morning, burn, burn, burn.
It was an almost military operation. In a South London warehouse nicknamed the Bunker, American Atex computer equipment was secretly tested. The computers were smuggled into Britain in unmarked crates. On the 18th of January last year, watched over by a police helicopter, Wapping went into operation, producing a supplement to the Sunday Times. The lorries rolling down the ramp represented a direct challenge to the Fleet Street unions. 5 days later, they voted to strike in support of their demand to work at Wapping. Murdoch promptly sacked all 5,500 of them. The Wapping dispute has produced some of the worst scenes of violence since the miners' strike. Hundreds of demonstrators and policemen have been injured as each Saturday the streets around the plant are turned into a battleground. More than 1,200 people have been charged with offences outside Wapping. As with the miners, there is the same sense of a desperate, close-knit group of workers who feel they have the whole power of the state against them. On some Saturdays, as many as 1,000 officers seal off the Wapping plant. Behind the barbed wire, the atmosphere in the newsrooms is eerily quiet, in contrast to the noise outside.
Shoots. Corporal dead.
What is clear is that Wapping has transformed his profitability. It's bringing in more than £2 million a week clear profit, and the Sun and the Sunday Times rank as perhaps the most lucrative papers in Britain. Wapping is a licence to print money. Mr. Murdoch says the profits are being ploughed back into Britain. The unions claim they're being poured overseas.
The fact of the matter, of course, is that the Sun and the News of the World are the milch cows of Murdoch's worldwide empire, and he's needed those all the way through to fund that investment that he's put into the United States of America. So we have British workers being put into quite an invidious position of having to lose their jobs to fund the investments which Murdoch has made in America.
The value of those investments of Murdoch's in America now represents 70% of his total assets. In New York, between the Brooklyn and Manhattan bridges, stands the building which serves as Murdoch's North American headquarters. His office is on the top floor of the New York Post building.
Get your post here, final post.
The New York Post loses $10 million a year, but Murdoch can easily afford it. Wapping has transformed his financial reputation. Before it, he was seen as overstretched and underfinanced. Now, as one of his bankers explains, News Corporation stock is highly prized.
More than anything else, the move to Wapping was a major factor in the very substantial expansion in the price of the shares of News Corp this year. Depending upon at what point in time you looked at it, the shares have more than tripled, possibly quadrupled. And certainly the anticipation of the cash flow growth, which is now coming through from Wapping, was very important.
I like the way he shakes an establishment, said one New York banker of Murdoch. In a way, he's the only worshipper in a church full of hypocrites. Wall Street likes what it hears about Wapping, and Murdoch can now borrow in America on the strength of what he's done in Britain. How much value would you put on the British titles now after the move?
I would think it's close to $1 billion, excluding any debt which may be outstanding against them.
And how much would you have thought they were worth before?
Certainly more like a third of that.
Much of the extra money being generated by Wapping is coming here, more than 6,000 miles and a world away from the East End of London. Rupert Murdoch's assets here in America are now more than 5 times the size of his holdings in Great Britain. And whereas in Britain he's seen as a bogeyman by many people, here in Hollywood he's viewed as a hero. For a price of $575 million, Rupert Murdoch has become sole owner of 20th Century Fox and a force to be reckoned with in Hollywood.
You want to do a project, daring, you go, and Rupert Murdoch can be convinced of it. He gets behind you. He puts huge amounts of money into it. He has the ability to raise capital that is, in Hollywood, just unimaginable. He's king of Hollywood for that reason and that reason alone, that the man comes with the deepest pockets imaginable. And in Hollywood, that really gets a lot of admiration.
There is a limit, even to the imagination.
Human teleportation, molecular decimation, breakdown, and reformation is inherently purging.
Where our greatest creations meet our deepest fears.
Something went wrong, Seth. When you went through, something went wrong.
You are about to go beyond that limit.
Murdoch's Midas touch has not deserted him. 20th Century Fox had been in deep financial trouble, but last year it produced some spectacular hits, including The Fly, due to open here next month, which took $36 million at the box office in 14 weeks. With one bound, Murdoch has broken into the U.S. entertainment business.
Help me. Please, help me. It's one of the success stories of Hollywood, in fact. Before he took it over, it was losing in the neighborhood of $20, $30 million a year. He first bought 50% of it, then bought all of it. And since that has happened, it has turned around quite dramatically. We're looking at profits this year of maybe $50 million in just 2 years.
Then, a couple of months before the move to Wapping, Murdoch bought Metro Media Television, borrowing $1.5 billion to do it. Now rechristened Fox, the deal gave him 6 major U.S. television stations. It's provided Murdoch with the ability to reach direct into the homes of 30 million Americans. He plans to couple the stations to his film studios in Hollywood to create nothing less than a 4th American television network, Fox Broadcasting, to take on CBS, NBC and ABC. In addition to his own stations, he has persuaded 100 local affiliates to take his programs.
MC3, Johnny?
Foreigners aren't allowed to own US television stations, so Murdoch switched nationality and became an American. He left the oath-taking ceremony clutching his citizenship, potentially the admission ticket to even greater fortune. He's been a phenomenally successful publisher in Britain, but television in America is the biggest and most ruthless media business in the world. Do you think you're going to be able to repeat the same trick in television and films here in America?
I hope so, but I think it'll take as long to do here as it took us to be successful in Britain. Success does not come quickly or easily in the media.
This autumn, America got its first taste of Murdoch television.
Live from Fox Television Center in Hollywood, it's The Late Show starring Joan Rivers. Joan's guests tonight are actress Tess Harper, Dr. Joyce Brothers, opera star Julia McGinnis, and a look at some of the contestants in our Joan...
The Joan Rivers Show, a late-night rival to the Johnny Carson Chat Show, is Fox's first networked program. Other game shows and soap operas are on the way, and through his ownership of 20th Century Fox, Murdoch has a library of 2,000 old movies and series like MASH and Batman to fill airtime.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Joan!
Not many people would give up their nationality to launch the Joan Rivers show, but if he succeeds, Murdoch stands to make a profit of up to $200 million a year, and other TV magnates believe he can do it. On previous form, it's unlikely it will be enough. In the meantime, Rupert Murdoch's place in the history of the British press is assured. Where Rothermere, Beaverbrook and Thomson failed, he is the man who took on the Fleet Street unions and won. Bouverie Street, where for 16 years millions of copies of The Sun and the News of the World were printed, now stands derelict, as it was on the night the workers here downed tools and walked out into industrial oblivion. The American business magazine Forbes recently said, "It boggles the mind. Murdoch uses an Australian ally, TNT, to break a strike in England to generate cash for TV stations in America." Here is the quintessential late 20th century man, a sardonic figure who understands in his gut what modern communication, modern finance and modern politics are all about.